Justin.
It's
I'm sorry.
We're live everywhere.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay.
You'll
It's
have
not
to
your
you'll have
fault.
to do with the digital picture I sent you instead.
Yeah, that's plenty. That's fine.
Did you send Justin an NFT?
Yeah, I dropped a cool 100,000 for an NFT and then I gave it to Justin.
I mean, you could make an NFT and then not charge anybody, and how cool would that be?
Yeah.
Anyway, this is This Week in Science. It's not This Week in NFTs. We're going to talk about science now and hopefully be a mood refresher, a mood lifter, maybe continue your upward trajectory of mood since Biden's congressional address this evening. Maybe you're feeling positive, and this is positively about science. Yeah, we're here, and I hope that you are ready to enjoy at least an hour of science with us, because we're
At
going to go
least
that
an
long.
hour.
Maybe longer, probably longer. Hopefully, we'll all have a good time. Some things may be edited for the podcast, but the following certain amount of time is live now
Raw.
and is all the things. So, welcome to This Week in Science. Are we ready to do a show?
Uh-huh.
I believe all systems are check. And
All right.
Check.
I believe Justin has loud headphones and wanted us to make sure that we were all checkity check, check.
Oh yeah. This for the
Justin?
pre-show tune-up. I just want to make sure that we're not blasting the volume, because I had to do some volume correction on this side to keep my ear holes from being exploding.
Well,
but if we're
unfortunately,
good-
I'm always blaring.
How many years have we been doing this show? And this is the first time you've used that joke?
Oh,
All right,
you know.
John Hogan in the chat room said sounds good. That's good enough for me, John. As long as your audio sounds good,
enough.
I'm fine for the rest of the show. All right,
All
let's
right,
rock.
y'all. Let's rock and roll. Let's start this show in 3, 2. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 822, recorded on Wednesday, April 28th, 2021. This show is totally reasonable. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the show tonight. We're going to fill your head. Oh, who am I? Hey, everyone. Welcome to the show. We're going to fill... I can't do this anymore.
That's all right. Just get in, everybody. Come on, everyone. Come in. Take
I got
a
this. Hold
seat.
on. Shh.
Pull up a chair.
I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on the show, we're going to fill your head with whales, stars, and a time bomb. But first...
Disclaimer. The following program is unintended for audiences of any age, as it contains information presented as news and informed opinion by experts, but often is not. Reasonable people are expected to understand the difference between actual journalism, political propaganda, and paid sponsorship influence manipulation in all content, though it will be considered an unreasonable burden for the program to point out which is which when we are doing it. Any medical advice, supplement testimonials, or favorable product mentions are at the sole discretion of the audience to regard as meaningful. While some people may be called doctor and even hold degrees of higher education relating to those titles, always remember that they may not be that kind of doctor, while others who may on occasion claim to be doctors clearly are not. No matter what advice they offer or what advice you select to take, they aren't your doctor. They don't know you or your medical history, and despite them looking into the camera and you seeing their eyes on the screen, the sense of connection you have is an illusionary product of the medium, as no actual eye contact has taken place. Consume this media at your own risk, as no legally described human or corporate entity is liable for the content. How it might affect you or your loved ones is none of our concern. Wait a sec. This doesn't... Hang on. My bad. This is not our disclaimer. This is for a cable news network. Ours goes like this. Welcome, everyone. Audience members are encouraged to dance along to the intro music as we begin another episode of This Week in Science. Coming up next. I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything
And a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We are back again, as we do every week, with the science news that we thought was worth talking about. We brought it. We've done it. We've got a whole show lined up full of amazing stories. I have stories related to shiny stars, robots on Mars, a COVID update, and news about brains.
You almost had a poem there. You just stopped just shy of it.
I know. It was right there. I'll just leave you hanging because, Justin, what did you bring?
Let's see. What did I bring? That's a great question. I've got milking the most out of milk, microplastic biofilms, antibiotic-resistant chimps, and why science needs to clean up its language.
Yeah, science. Clean it up. Okay, Blair, what's in the animal corner?
I have whale songs. I have sponges on the move. And I have marathon running fruit flies.
Fun fact. I tell all of my kids that they were this close from being named Whale Song.
Like the word
why
whale
would you
song?
do that?
Like the word Whale Song. That was the name. No, I wasn't going to name it. But I was actually going to. You were almost named Whale Song, and the last minute it got changed.
And then do they say thank you?
Yes.
No, they say.
Yes, but I'm like, but you're also free to use it. I tell them you're free to use it if you want. But then the kids eventually talk and they find out they've all been told this story. So
It's true for every last one of them.
Every one of them.
Every one. They were almost the one. But you out there, you are almost the one to have subscribed to This Week in Science. If you haven't done it yet, you can find us on all podcast platforms. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We are on Twitch. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're out there. If you want to find us, though, our website is twis.org. Also look for This Week in Science. We are there. Let's talk about the science from the week. Yeah, this last week, actually 2 weeks-ish, have been big Mars milestones.
A lot of Mars news, yeah.
A lot of Mars milestones. Now, you all know that Perseverance landed on Mars successfully, and the Perseverance rover has started roving Jericho Crater, and it dropped a little helicopter named Ingenuity. Cute little name for this helicopter. And they at NASA JPL had tested the prototype of Ingenuity to show that it could fly in a light atmosphere, an atmosphere less dense than Earth's own atmosphere. They couldn't quite reduce the gravity, which is an issue with Mars, but they showed that it could fly here on Earth in a reduced atmosphere. So they dropped it off. Perseverance dropped it off, drove away, kept taking pictures and looking on back, and they tried flying it. And lo and behold, 3 successful flights now. They have hovered about 16 feet above the surface of Mars, and they have done horizontal movements. They have used the camera to take a picture of the landing site of Perseverance. I don't know, actually it's like 126 feet up. Anyway, they have been moving this little Mars copter around, and tomorrow will be its 4th flight. And then Friday, they will have a press briefing about what they plan to do with little Ingenuity. But milestone, they flew a drone on another planet. Pretty cool. And it's robotic. It's not controlled by anyone here on Earth because there's too much of a time difference. So it's all robot controlled, all algorithms. Additionally, Perseverance has an instrument on it that is called the Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment, or MOXIE for short. Perseverance has MOXIE. That's a good little tag phrase for all of y'all. MOXIE used carbon dioxide in the Martian atmosphere to create oxygen. For the first time on another planet, we have created oxygen.
We are terraforming. Little bit at a time. This is going to be a while.
Yeah, so this isn't for terraforming purposes, but it is proof of concept.
That's exactly what it's for.
Well, it's making oxygen that we could breathe, that astronauts could breathe, or Marstronauts, should we go to Mars. And also, it's for creating rocket fuel, because you have the rocket fuel part, and then you need oxygen for the fuel to burn. So they need to be able to launch from Mars at some point in the future about 25 metric tons of oxygen. The MOXIE experiment, in about 2 hours of warming up and about an hour of actually running the instrument, it created 5.4 grams of oxygen. They hope to build a bigger MOXIE someday and maybe be able to have more oxygen for astronaut breathing and launching rockets. We'll see.
Patrick in the chat room says his group worked. My group at work developed part of MOXIE. Nice.
Oh, fantastic. Congratulations, Patrick. You must be proud of the work that has gone on. Yeah, but still, it's pretty.
Patrick says, I wasn't there. I joined after the launch. But still, it's still.
Part of the group.
Proud tradition of your work group. Yes.
We're going to need more MOXIE. We're going to need a bigger MOXIE. Exactly, Fada. Anyway, lots of milestones on Mars and definitely more to come. I mean, these are the kinds of things, especially the oxygen production. Mm-hmm. These are the kinds of things that you look at and you go, maybe there is potential for human settlement, for rockets on going to Mars and returning. And it just kind of opens up. This proof of concept opens up your imagination to what more can come.
Yeah, those nitty-gritty details are the things that move us out of science fiction. Yeah.
Yep, having experiments that work. Exactly. Justin, tell me a story.
Oh, is it that time? All right.
Yes.
Let's see. I don't know I'm going to see which one I got lined up here first. It is... Ooh, yes, this is the milk one. Okay. So
it does a body good. Yeah, okay, we know that.
This is not the most... Anyway, okay, this is out of this is researchers at the National Food Institute at DTU, Danish Technical University in Denmark, have come up with a solution to use waste whey.
No way.
Yes, whey.
That was... No way.
Yes, way. So they've got this non-GMO bred lactic acid bacterium, which secretes a peptide called Nisin, I think I'm pronouncing that right, which they have grown on dairy waste. So Nisin is a food-grade preservative, which means it is a peptide that is killing microbes that could contaminate food or that could make people sick, and yet is completely safe for people to eat. This extends the shelf life of food, making food last longer, making it safer to eat. It is not a new peptide. This has been around. We've been putting this in food as a preservative for over 50 years, and it's always come from this bacteria. But what this discovery is doing is it's sort of utilizing the waste generated when cheese is made. So what whey is you take milk from cows and you then take out everything that makes cheese. So you can take out the fat and much of the proteins and all the yummy cheese stuff. What you're left over with is whey, which is like 90% water, still has some protein in it. Now, dairies at this point will take that protein out of the whey, extract that, and put that into basically every protein-packed nutritional supplement you would get at a sports fitness product store type thing. That's where that goes. But what's left just gets tossed, and what they have discovered is that you can actually grow this bacterium that they have, I think, sort of coached. So it's not GMO. Nobody went in and CRISPR'd or spliced. But it looks like they took this property of this bacteria and this property of this bacteria, and let's just sort of breed them over time and on different substrates until we get what we want. Which is sort of it's sort of the ridiculous aspect of GMO versus non-GMO, which is that if we did it on purpose, like specifically and targeted, that's genetically modified. If we just let nature take place with a little bit of like, hey, how about you and you get together and you over here, but we're going to put you in this place to live and build it up that way, then that's not GMO. That's just nature. Anyway, so they got it to work. And it was sort of an interesting thing, too, because this is, aside from all of the, it's going to make food safer, blah, blah, blah. It also seems like it can make some money. This Nisin stuff is $50 an ounce, which that's pretty good. That's more than silver. It's a precious metal type of earnings you can get off of this. So yeah. So another venue of earning for farmers, dairy farmers, and another way to keep food preserved longer. The benefits of bacteria.
Bacteria they're seriously the future.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
they're a past, present, and future.
They're the future, yes. Just learning how to live with them and use them to our benefit on purpose.
You have a lovely diagram of the way that that they did this, which is just letting nature take its place by putting the right bacteria actors together. This has this property that you like, but it doesn't live on the right substrate. So you find one that doesn't have the trait you want, but it loves that substrate. Put them together long enough. Sure enough,
trade their genes. There you go.
There you go. At some point, you get exactly what you're looking for.
Au natural.
Yeah.
Yes. We like our cheese au natural. But what's more natural? Yeah, what's more natural?
Mm-hmm.
What is more natural than speaking whale?
Should we just take a break in the show? Oh, we are. We're just going to...
Geochemical and Environmental Research Group, GERG, sounds like a whale sound itself, a center within the College of Geosciences at Texas A&M University, is planning to conduct a research program with Project SETI, the Cetacean Translation Initiative, to understand.
So not SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
No, this is with a C in the front, you see.
Okay, got it.
But it sounds the same.
Unless it's actually pronounced Keti, and I'm saying it wrong.
Cetacean is going to be
Yeah.
Anyway.
But anyway, it's to understand the vocalizations of sperm whales off the coast of Dominica and in the Caribbean. So they're going to speak whale. This is the whole point of this study. They built 3 massive buoys and moorings, which GERG is going to deploy in about 6,000 to 7,500 feet of water. Maybe it's JERG, I don't know. Also, they plan on working with the University of Haifa, Israel, to develop acoustic monitoring systems within the buoys. So they're planning on using artificial intelligence and machine learning, which will then translate the clicks and other vocalizations of sperm whales into a language to understand what they are talking about. They really think now they have the tools to identify and translate the deep structure of sperm whale communication patterns, which will kickstart the path towards a meaningful dialogue with other species. So their aim is to illustrate whales' intelligence, potential conservation actions, and be able to speak with whales.
I want to speak with the whales. I mean, and then we can speak with the whale space aliens. We can get SETI and SETI to talk to each other.
Well, we already have whale sounds on the golden record, right? So we're halfway there. So they're actually using this AI that has already been able to, in the past, translate 2 unknown human languages without any sort of Rosetta Stone or parallel structure. This AI has been able to interpret these previously untranslatable human languages. So that was their proof of concept. So now they think that they can sick this AI on whale song and be able to speak with whales.
So wait a second. Okay. Interesting. Now I got to figure out how you translate a previously untranslated language.
Yeah.
And nobody can check your work.
Truth.
No, that's what it says. It's clearly what it says. But the other thing is, I'm like, I want to know what the whales say. I have a feeling it's going to be, knock it off.
Do you hear that? It's so loud.
Stop killing us.
Why is that big metal fish running into us? Why did it scare off all the other fish?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of unhappy campers, I think. But anyway,
I think it's fascinating. And if the AI works with whales, I hope that they apply it to all sorts of different species who use various signals for communication. I mean, if the AI algorithm is able to interpret and understand these things that have been so hard for humans to figure out when language is our thing, right? We talk to each other all the time in all sorts of different ways. I think that could be very, 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 just groundbreaking. Really groundbreaking, earth-shaking.
Well, it makes me think about 2 things. So one is, I know these are supposed to be our short stories, but one is the viral thing on the internet now where people are teaching their dogs to push on buttons to say words. So that's kind of a reverse engineering. Too. Like the animals are learning how to communicate with us, which I think is very funny. But it also reminds me of the baby translator from The Simpsons. And I feel like this is going to be very similar because a lot of it, I don't know if they're going to be able to translate whale speech into direct human language, but I think they will be able to figure out context. Yeah. This whale is happy. This whale is hungry. This whale is scared. This whale is looking for another whale. And I think that is going to be pretty easy to do based on all of this, but turning it into a full language and being able to speak back to the whale, I don't know. We'll see about that. I think it's an exciting prospect, and I think it's certainly possible. But
just word of warning.
Skeptical.
Just word of warning to the researchers who are working on this: do not, and I repeat, do not eavesdrop on squirrels.
Yeah, I would agree.
I don't know what squirrels are talking about.
You're in for a world of hurt if they catch on that you can hear them. That's all I'm going to say.
I think with animals like
probably said too much.
With animals like sperm whales, elephants, others that use use ultrasound for long distance communication. I wonder how the AI is going to be able to interpret that, because long distance communication is the time between call and response is potentially huge, and to a point where there is no connection anymore to an outside observer.
Okay, so then we now know
interesting aspects.
We now know the words for "to whom it may concern." Right? You've done it, Kiki. You've already deciphered.
Sincerely.
Yeah. Well, it's as it stands. I feel like
I have a feeling whales are very formal. I don't know. Yeah.
Most animal sounds, I can tell you right now, like maybe not more than half, but a lot of animal sounds are just, I'm here.
So says you, Blair.
Yeah, well, you know. You don't speak
How do you
animal.
know how much animals understand? I mean, there is a lot of variation in sounds. Yeah.
Patrick in the chat room, who was, I believe, instrumental in the creation of Moxie, says, points out, yes, we translated prairie dogs. Oh, we did. I mean, we actually have words. We know words that they say. or names that they use for specific animals that show up as threats.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And now we know that dolphins have names for that they name each other. They name themselves and use those names to identify each other and put themselves in packs.
I didn't know that. I missed that one. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, there's lots of animals that we know that have names basically for each other.
Okay. So the naming thing is sort of the beginning of this whole language stuff. You got to know, we got to have a sound, an utterance, a communique, they're common to the group to know, hey, here's what we're paying attention to. Now, here's this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very basic, very important.
Anyway, very interesting stuff. Thank you. I'd like to speak whale someday. Speak to a whale. Maybe. But in the meantime, I am excited about new results for a phase 2 clinical trial for a malaria vaccine. Now, we've been talking a lot about COVID and COVID vaccines over the past year, but malaria actually kills about 400,000 people every year. Year in, year out, not a pandemic, just this is a thing that came out, but all the time. Lots of people are dying around the world from malaria. And it has been a struggle to find a vaccine because of the speed at which the malaria parasite is able to adapt and change its form and overcome. One vaccine that has been in use for a while now has already, it's Mosquirix. It's been deployed with World Health Organization support in Malawi, Kenya, and Ghana. 4 years is all it's been in use. Its efficacy has declined to 36%. So it's not very good. Now, there is a paper in The Lancet. It's a preprint. The authors are publishing related to their phase 2 trial. They are working out of Oxford's Jenner Institute, and this trial involved 450 children between the ages of 5 and 17 months, followed them for a year, gave them a booster shot, and they discovered that they had 74 to 77% efficacy. And the World Health Organization has said that they would like a vaccine for malaria that is at least 75% effective. So this vaccine potentially is in there. They found that efficacy did start to wane over time. Antibodies started to decrease. The immune response of the kids started to decrease over the year that they were tracked. But the booster shot got the antibodies back up again, and everything was fine. So this could be the kind of thing that needs a booster shot. However, if its efficacy is waning quickly over a year, how often do booster shots have to be given? And how long will it last before the genetic adaptation of the parasite actually overcomes the vaccine? So how long will it actually last? It's great news for now. It's a small trial. They're hoping to get into a phase 3 trial in 2022 so that they can actually, hopefully, starting to get it manufactured by 2023. That's their goal. Their goal is to have results. Yes. We want to reduce deaths from all sorts of things around the world. I find it interesting, though, like we're talking about all this adaptation and the genetic sequencing and all this stuff for COVID-19. And it's like, okay, we're going to figure out COVID-19. Can we just do a 1-year workshop where all the money and all the resources go to a different disease every year, and everybody works as hard as they can to solve that problem? Because I feel like the past year for COVID has advanced our understanding of coronaviruses, of mRNA vaccines, of so many things.
Yeah, well, and the process behind it's kind of honed down the governmental process in the background, I think, too, and kind of streamline that process a little bit, which is really good. The thing that kind of scares me about this, though, is that malaria is one of those things that's been around for a long time, and we've seen kind of how it continued to mutate and resist. And I think that's what stories like this also kind of scare me about, just because we're still in the middle of this, and it's almost like seeing the ghost of Christmas future of like what could happen if we don't properly beat this thing.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I think this is a really important reminder too of what's at stake from not getting vaccinated, from not staying socially distant before you're vaccinated, and even after, making sure that we can actually conquer this thing so we don't end up with a lifelong problem that is continually mutating.
Well, we are already. It's endemic. I mean, we're going to talk about COVID in the COVID update, but yeah. Things that are endemic, you have to continue to adapt with them. And we know we have things, lots of diseases that have been with us for a very long time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot that has to be determined and figured out about things, but yeah. Hey, I don't know where Justin went. Maybe he went to go get some more coffee, but do you want to tell me a story? Do you have anything for the first part? No.
I'm all done with my short stories.
I don't know where Justin went. Maybe he went back to bed. All right. Well, on that note, I will jump to my next story, which has nothing to do with diseases, but is far-reaching. Cosmic, man. When is a star not a normal star?
When it's awesome.
Stars are always awesome. No, when it's made of antimatter.
Oh, also that.
Yes, also that. So we've had this idea for a very long time that with the standard model and the way that it works, that antimatter and matter collided at the beginnings of the universe, and the antimatter lost. And there really is not a lot of antimatter left in the universe today, and that the antimatter that's there is dispersed and it's all around. But it's this mystery of, what exactly did happen to all the antimatter. We don't know where it went. And so some researchers for a long time have been like, well, what if it didn't all get destroyed? What if some of it got clumped together? What if some antimatter formed little pockets in the forming universe? And what if some of the stars that we see today are actually made of antimatter and not matter? Apparently, light from an antimatter star would look exactly the same as light from a normal star. You wouldn't be able to tell a difference just looking at the light from a star. And so researchers looked at a bunch of data from an instrument on the International Space Station, Fermi telescope, to look at 10 years of observations, 5,800 gamma ray sources in the data catalog. They found 14 points of light that gave off gamma rays with energies that would be expected from matter, antimatter, and annihilation. But they didn't look like anything else. They didn't look like a black hole. They didn't look like anything that we would normally be looking at out in space. And so they have these points of light that are out there that have abnormal signatures, but potentially have this antimatter-matter annihilation signature, which would mean that, okay, you've got a star, it's got a big gravitational pull, and that gravitational pull could be pulling in matter from the surrounding system. And when the matter and antimatter collide, you'd get antimatter-matter annihilation signals, but it would not be exactly the same it wouldn't be exactly the same as a black hole, because a black hole is made of matter, not antimatter. It wouldn't be a pulsar because a pulsar is made of matter, not antimatter. So they have these strange signals and they're trying to figure it out. But they're like, you can't really prove. This researcher, his quote is just fantastic, because he's like, it would be practically impossible to say that the candidates are actually anti-stars. It would be much easier to disprove that they're anti-stars.
I mean, that's generally how science works, right?
Yeah. It's like that's how it works. Exactly. You don't prove something, you disprove things.
Disprove everything around it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You winnow down the possibilities. But they've got these weird signals. They're like, they're looking at it. And this is another thing that we're really not going to know unless we do a lot of disproving. If anti-stars actually exist, they could potentially put a big wrench in the standard model of physics.
Ow, they'll fit. It'll fit just fine. This is the thing. Every time something's trying to put a wrench in the standard model, it just fits. It ends up the thing. That's how it works. It hasn't changed anything. Standard models is standard for a reason. It's pretty standard.
It's pretty standard, yeah. But anyway, anti-stars. Who knew?
Look just like stars.
They look just like stars. So when you look up at the sky, you're like, that's a star. Starlight, anti-star bright. First, could it be a star I see tonight?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it wouldn't make any difference. Is basically the end of the story. It's like if half the known universe is made up of antimatter, it would be the same.
Then it's just matter.
Well, that was the thing.
It's not, but
it's also the thing. It's like, how come we're made out of matter and the antimatter is antimatter? It's a little judgy.
Yeah.
Little judgy is all I'm saying.
It is just a bit. Mm-hmm. Hey, Justin, did you have a story?
Oh, yes. So we're all aware of microplastics and how much fun they are to have throughout our environment these days.
Delicious.
Yeah, Yang Liu, researcher at Hong Kong Polytechnic University, has come up with an approach to take on these microplastics and get them out of our environment. The method uses a sticky bacterial biofilm to trap microplastics. The biofilm is then processed and dispersed, releasing the microplastic particles so that they can be, recycled into more plastics or just buried deep in a hole somewhere. The method uses the bacterium Pseudomonas aeruginosa. I should have practiced this before trying to say a new bacterium for the first time live on air. Pseudomonas aeruginosa to capture the microplastics in a bioreactor. Basically, this biofilm aggregates together around this microplastic in the bioreactor, which is think of a big spinning, kind of like a blender moving sort of slow. The reaction takes place. It grabs onto these microplastics, and then by clumping around them, gets heavy, drops to the bottom of the bioreactor, and then is easy to scoop out of the bottom at the end of the process. So the idea is you could run this through wastewater treatment plants. That's where a lot of our microplastics are escaping, at least to the ocean. You could also use it at the back end of manufacturing processes so that you could be removing microplastics from stuff that, say, ends up in our food or in our cosmetics, maybe even, or waste from making cosmetics, or from processes that end up in our pharmaceutical supply, sort of thing. So it's still one of those things that would require a lot of effort and infrastructure around it. However, so far, and the tests that they have been doing, they have been successful in removing microplastics from an environment.
I love it. I mean, this is, if we can do it on a large scale, that's fantastic. If we could have household microplastics removal, just instead of running your water through a charcoal filter, maybe you also have a biofilm reactor for your drinking water.
Well, and the thing would be to put it in your drain, right? So you can prevent it from going out also.
Well, so this is like this
big point.
Leo brings up something and is quoted as saying this, that I didn't consider. Bad enough you have microplastics that can build up and be in a system where they don't belong. But this is quoting Liu. Due to their huge surface area and absorption capacity, microplastics can absorb toxic pollutants such as pesticides, heavy metals, and drug residue at high concentration. This leads to biological and chemical toxicity to organisms in the ecosystems and humans after prolonged unintended consumption of such microplastics. Moreover, microplastics are also difficult to remove in wastewater plants, resulting in their undesired release into the environment. So you put these absorptive things into wastewater treatment, and then they escape with the waste.
They'll get rid of the plastics, and then at least the pharmaceutical stuff that makes it through the wastewater won't glom on to the plastics as much anymore and be as much of a problem. So this is, it's solving one part of the problem. It's good.
But I didn't even think of the microplastics as tiny, everything nasty sponges. But apparently that's what they're doing.
That's what they do. Yeah. Let us grab onto all the nasty things. Microplastics. So nasty. This is This Week in Science. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we do hope that you are enjoying the show. If you're enjoying it, consider telling a friend about TWIS today. Let's have a COVID update.
You have good news today?
I've got
It's a very upbeat intro.
I've got some good news and some
Hopefully it's
bad
connected.
news.
Okay. Okay.
Everything is tempered these days.
Can we have the bad news first? Is that how you have it set up?
No. Well, kind of.
Okay, never mind.
We'll get in there. We will get in there. All right, everybody. I would like you to know that vaccinations are moving apace. Our World in Data has shown that is reporting that we have reached over 1 billion vaccine doses worldwide.
Wow, that's a good number.
1 billion. I mean, that is
1/7 of the way.
Yeah, a seventh of the way there. Yes. But even as...
It would have been only 1/8 of the way before the pandemic.
Right. Ouch. Oh, ouch. No. I'm sad, but this is bringing me to the rest of the news. So, the United States, we're doing really great at vaccinations. Last time we had a COVID update, the United States was about to open up vaccines for all people 16 years of age and older. That has happened. And hey, we peaked, and now the number of daily vaccinations is dropping. And there are lots of reports of local vaccination clinics actually shutting down and vaccines being moved from place to place because there's not enough demand in some locations. So this is a problem because vaccines are our non-deadly route to herd immunity. So we hope that people will continue to get vaccinated and allow us to get to that herd immunity, even as these vaccine doses are getting doled out. And each of you that are going out and getting vaccinated, thank you so much for doing that. India is struggling right now. They are experiencing more than 350,000 new cases every day. Their hospitals are overwhelmed. They are experiencing supply shortages, running out of oxygen, and they have a rising death count. And some researchers believe that the reported numbers are undercounting. So the true impact is actually potentially much, much greater than what we're hearing about on the news. And all of it is bound to reverberate around the world in many different ways. So that's the bad news. Our government, the United States, other governments have pledged their support of India and are sending supplies. There are COVID warriors, volunteers who have started to try and get supplies, very similar to what many people around the world did at the onset of the COVID outbreak with relation to personal protective gear and other things to try and help hospitals in that way. So there's a lot of work happening, and hopefully through people working together, what India goes through, it can be lessened, but it is big, and it's not good at all. Yeah, exactly, Gaurav. People are dying in rural areas and being cremated and buried in fields. People aren't making it to hospitals. Hospitals are full. I mean, it's really not good. It's awful. Anyway, let's move on to better news. I do have good news out of all this.
Oh, thank goodness.
The CDC has updated its mask guidance, which is exciting. Data has supported. What?
Is it exciting?
Let her talk, and then we can talk about it.
We can talk about this. Yes, they have updated their guidance on wearing masks outdoors because data has shown, and they're using data, that the likelihood of COVID transmission outdoors is extremely low. It does still happen, however, so masks should be worn if social distancing is not possible. They're not saying, go ahead, meet in large groups at a festival or a fair and nobody wear masks. That is not what they're saying. They're saying, use your reason.
How is this
and
an
that's
update?
the problem.
Wait a second, but I'm the most confused person in the world hearing this, because I've heard this. You're telling me this. The other news outlet people have been telling me this. Oh, there was a big announcement. The President of the United States just sat in front of a podium and said this. This is information. Here's the new deal. Okay, but here's the thing. At what point was it not okay to be outside by yourself and not wear a mask? It
was always fine to be outside by yourself without a mask.
So it was always fine. There were places where that was not allowed. So starting from last summer, for example, in the city of San Francisco, you were not allowed to be outside your home without a mask on. Period. And that's because, especially in very
big cities,
metropolitan areas,
yeah,
social distancing isn't possible, right? And so this is the difference, is that also, a lot of places haven't decided what they're going to do about this yet, but botanical gardens, zoos, parks, those are places that have mask mandates. Mm-hmm. Will those continue? We don't know. So this actually has a potential to have pretty big impacts on how we do things. But I think the thing that kind of concerns me about this, I appreciate the CDC acting on data, and I think that is very important, and that helps with support of the CDC and belief in the system, and I appreciate that. I think where I get concerned is that if you look at what the CDC released, it's a lot of ifs. It's if you can stay out of 6 feet, if you are not sharing air with that person for an extended period of time, more than 2 to 5 minutes, if everyone around you is vaccinated. There's lots of ifs involved. And for example, if I am on a hike and I'm keeping pace with someone who is just a few feet in front of me, I am sharing air with them, actually, for a pretty long time. So this is the part that kind of scares me, is that I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but I feel like this pandemic has shown us that sometimes large groups of people are not good with the gray area and the ifs and the qualifiers.
Yep, I think you're right. But so let me give you some quotes from medical professionals about this. So related to the question of what do we know about the likelihood of SARS-CoV-2 transmission outdoors. Monica Gandhi, MD, MPH, infectious diseases doctor, professor of medicine at UC San Francisco, says the risk of outside transmission is very low because viral particles disperse effectively in the outside air. A study in China, which involved careful contact tracing, discovered that just one of 7,324 infection events investigated was linked to outdoor transmission. In a recent analysis, over 232,000 infections in Ireland, only one case of COVID-19 in every 1,000 was traced to outdoor transmission. And a scoping review from the University of Canterbury concluded that outdoor transmission was rare, citing the opportunity costs of not encouraging the public to congregate outdoors. Overall, transmission is around 5,000 times less likely to happen outside than inside. So if you're the kind of person who thinks about cost-benefit analysis, risk analysis, you can make that choice of mask or no mask, and you can be comfortable with the gray area of, 5,000 times less likely to be transmitted. But if you need certainty, just wear your mask. Don't worry about it. If it makes you uncomfortable, just wear a mask, and that'll be fine. But just know that there is data out there. It is also Asim Shah. He's a professor of community and family medicine, professor of psychiatry at Baylor College of Medicine, says that what the CDC is saying is that if someone is outside, you don't have to wear a mask. That's a relief for people who do a lot of outdoor activities. The ambiguity is gathering size, because a lot of people are worried about what gathering size they're talking about. And that gets at the if. They have another question based on the CDC guidance. How should people decide what size small group is acceptable for maskless outdoor gatherings? And this is definitely the gray area, because you have less risk to vaccinated people, more risk to unvaccinated people. Monica Gandhi, again, recommends unvaccinated people in crowds or packed situations put on their masks. But again, if you're on a sidewalk, walking down the street, it's not necessary. And there aren't a lot of people around congregated. That's not necessarily as much of an issue.
So
it is vague. It is very vague.
I'm old enough to remember when restaurants had smoking sections.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I know. You've brought up the smoking before. The air travels.
The air travels. So, you were talking about being a few feet behind a hiker. If you're downwind 30, 40, 50 feet away from a smoker, you can smell that. Yeah. I mean, it's strong enough to be like, ugh, right? So there's even the outdoors. This is not going to be perfect, but I love those. I love those numbers about at least the traceability, the rates being so low. The other thing is, if there's somebody in there in the YouTube chat talking about anti-maskers on their Facebook channel. You know what the study I would love to follow up on this whole pandemic is the rates of STDs amongst anti-maskers versus maskers. Because I have a feeling there's a correlation between who's got what based on
That's funny.
the resistance for using personal protection.
Yeah, I think the other thing that hopefully won't be an issue, because we've been doing this for over a year, but that I was thinking about was between the time when they first started saying, okay, you need to wear a mask when you're inside, and then that time when, at least in my area, there was a crackdown on being outside and wearing masks, mask compliance indoors increased because people were habit forming.
Yeah.
And that's the other kind of social science side of this concern that I have, is that if you're breaking that habit that we spent a year building, is that going to impact people's behavior indoors?
It won't if regulations stay in place to keep wearing masks indoors.
It's very hard to actually kind of police every single person in an indoor space, but
yeah, I mean,
it's tough. I understand. There's lots of factors going on, and if we're going to be doing this for another year, I hope not, but it's going to be a lot easier if you can be maskless outside, and I do understand that.
Yep, it's going to be some time. We will get there, especially if people vaccinate. Mm-hmm. The more people who are vaccinated, the less spread of the virus there will be, the less possibility of transmission there will be, and then we'll be able to go maskless all over the place again. And the final story that is great news follows up on a bunch of different questions that we've had. One, whether or not the vaccines prevent transmission of the virus, not just decrease disease severity. And we've had some data coming out that, yes, indeed, they do prevent transmission. But then the question is, well, recently there was a big article in the New York Times about people only getting their first shot and not necessarily going in for their second shot. And we know that the second shot can confer up to 95% protection from going into the hospital. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine was keeping people out of the hospital, right and left. Pfizer vaccine, keeping people out of the hospital, reducing disease severity, but after 2 doses. But what about disease transmission? What about infection and transmission? Well, a study out of Public Health England finds that after just 1 dose of Pfizer, people who became, and the AstraZeneca vaccine, people who became infected with COVID, so they were protected a little, but they got sick, they got infected, they were between 38 and 49% less likely to pass it on to members of their household than unvaccinated individuals. So the bottom line is that even with 1 dose, you are protected a little bit. You're not going to be as sick, not end up in the hospital necessarily. And you're going to be protecting those around you even more. Just so 1 dose helps.
Yeah,
2 doses is best if you need the 2-dose regime.
Yes.
But,
yes.
Yeah. Right.
But if you're afraid of the side effects you've been hearing, those are 2nd dose. First dose is easy. So just go get the first one and then think about it.
And the 2nd dose, the side effects are really only
finding a half measure to get it. You understand what I'm saying there, Blair? I'm not saying you only need the first one. I'm saying if you're not getting it yet, just do the first one and then you can decide.
And some people have put it off because they're waiting, because they haven't been able to get an appointment, or for whatever reason they didn't go into their 2nd appointment and it just hasn't happened yet. Some people are afraid of the 2nd dose side effects, and they don't affect everybody. They really only affect like 20% to a quarter of individuals. I mean, that in any way that is like, but none of the side effects to this point that I've heard of are severe adverse events. They are all just not nice side effects that are just like, okay.
Headache, sweats, fever. Wake up the next day, you're fine.
I've got an egg.
Tinnitus is one,
I've got an egg-sized lymph node or something underneath my armpit that has not gone away for, what's it been, 2 weeks?
Yeah.
But, I also am not going to likely end up in a hospital on a respirator. So there's
your immune system is activated. Joint pain, arthritis, some autoimmune disorders may flare up because your immune system is working really hard because of the vaccine. But I don't. It's everything points to being better off with the vaccine, and our communities being better off with the vaccine overall.
Fada got the 2nd one this morning.
Congratulations.
Okay. Not even arm pain.
I celebrate every person who gets vaccinated. Thank you. Thank you for protecting your community. Thank you for being a part of public health.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Anyhow, Fada, let us know about your side effects. But it's good news. The vaccine reduces transmission, even with 1 dose. This is going to help reduce the spread of the virus. Let's get there.
Perfect. Prefect it's right. Yeah. Get the first shot. Stay 3 feet away. Wash your hands for 10 seconds. If those half measures are all you can do, at least you're trying, I guess.
We try. This is This Week in Science. We've been having a lot of fun so far. We still have more stories to come. If you would like to keep This Week in Science going, help be a part of producing the show by helping to fund what we do, head over to TWIS.org, click on the Patreon buttons, and choose your level of support, $10 and up, and we'll thank you by name at the end of the show. It's a really great thing to be a part of the community of people who help to keep TWIS going week in and week out. Thank you for your support. We really can't do this without you. All right, y'all. It's time for a certain part of the show. It's full of squeaky things and moving things and flappy things and slimy things. Oh, it's time for Blair's Animal Corner.
With Blair?
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. There's animal.
What you got, Blair?
I have sea sponges.
What?
You know, sponges.
Sponges?
You go, you wipe things, you do the dishes, sponges. You know,
Spongoos.
spongoos. Yes, you know what
Yes.
you're talking about. Sea spongoos. Sea sponges. Sorry. They are what we consider sessile. What does sessile mean? What does it mean?
Attached to something and not swimming around.
They don't
dormant.
move.
Yeah.
Not dormant necessarily, but definitely not moving. So
Barnacles
sponges,
are sessile.
Barnacles are sessile. Urchins, or not urchins, sorry, anemones. Anemones are sessile. Corals are sessile. They're not moving around to different places on the seafloor. They might move around within their spot to feed, but they're not on the move. Well, so sponges have always been described, once they're adults, as sessile. They have a larval phase that they can move around, but once they find a spot, they plant. So, researchers this week have described mysterious trails of sponge spicules, spike-like support elements in sponges in paths across the sea floor in the Arctic Ocean. These trails, they think, are actually traces of motility of the sponges.
No.
Yes. So this is from Max Planck Institute of Marine Microbiology and the Alfred Wegener Helmholtz Center for Polar and Marine Research. It looks as though these sea sponges have crawled around into different positions. Sponges, as I said, they were considered sessile. They have no muscles. They have no specialized organs for moving around. They can
Sponges
retract.
are spunky.
They're spunky. They can retract their external if there's some sort of external stimulation, like they need to eat, they can move their body around a little bit by contracting or expanding their bodies. But they haven't really seen in the wild sponges moving. There's been a tiny bit of evidence of sponges moving in the lab, but they don't know if this is anecdotal, if there was a current in the tank or something going on, right? So this was from video captured in 2016. This was a survey of submerged peaks of the permanently ice-covered Langzith Ridge in the Arctic Ocean. There was a towed marine camera sled and a hybrid remotely operated vehicle, HROV. And this showed the peaks of the ridge covered by some of the densest communities of sponges the world has ever seen. So many sponges. The researchers determined that the impressive sponge populations were 3 species: Geodia parva, Geodia henscheli, and Stelletta raphidiophora.
Nice
in case
word.
that means something to you. Just basically you need to know there were 3 main species of sponges on these ridges. But what was wild, besides the fact that this was this huge group of sponges, was that there were trails of sponge spicules, as I mentioned before. They saw nearly 70% of their images containing living sponges that had trails in them. So where there were sponges, there were trails. The trails were several centimeters in height, up to many meters long, and they often connected directly to living sponges. So this really looked like you were seeing the kind of the tread marks of these sponges. And
like the tread marks of a Mars rover, except it's these sponges.
Yes. And so they made 3D models from the images and video to show the way the trails were interwoven. And the findings suggest that the moving sponges they sometimes change direction, which shows that they're not just getting pushed or pulled by currents or gravity. It seems like they're actually moving intentionally in a direction. And that's also because often these trails would go uphill. So despite not having locomotory organ systems or structures or anything that would make us think that they could move, it looks like they're wiggling around the seafloor. And so there's a few theories about why they might be moving around. Could be to get food. It could be driven by scarce Arctic resources. So this is in the Arctic Ocean. There's not a lot going on. But also, so I was thinking about these ridges that a lot of them were up on. And the way that currents move and water flows, that could be kind of a quick condense of very sparse nutrients in the water column. So the concentration of nutrients might be higher at those ridge points. And if that's the case, then that might be a good spot for sponges to hang out. So this looks like there's feeding and population density behavioral trends that we've previously seen in sponges when they're in one spot. And it was kind of assumed that it was just the larva picking a spot to settle. But now we think maybe they're on the move. It's also possible, of course, that movement might have something to do with reproduction or dispersal. But for now, it looks like it's probably for feeding. And so the next step for these researchers is to do a whole bunch of time-lapse imagery and other studies on these wild sponges to see really how much they're moving, why, all that good stuff.
So immediately, the thing that jumps out is that this is in the Arctic, which is more of a life desert than other places on the planet where you'll find sponges in abundance. And so it could just be that because there's nothing else around disturbing the trails, they're just that obvious there. Whereas it's been going on everywhere else that there's sponges, but we never notice because the seafloor is just too busy.
Or do Arctic species have to move around because it's a desert, whereas other places, they don't?
And just chill.
Great questions. Yeah, perhaps to be answered in the future. Looking at sponge motility. Yeah, there you go.
Who knew?
So once again, a rewrite of the textbooks.
Yeah. Wow. This makes you think so differently about those natural sponges that you get for your kitchen.
Kiki, say it right.
Sponges.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. Moving from sponges to fruit flies. I don't know how to mispronounce that and make it let's talk about fruit flies.
Fruit flies? Flies, not fleas.
Flies. Flings. Anyway. Fruit flies, they're extreme ultramarathon runners or flyers, as the case may be. So to give you a bit of a background here, in 2005, there was an ultramarathon runner that ran continuously 560 kilometers or 350 miles in 80 hours without sleeping or stopping. And if you turn that into body lengths, which is how we often talk about the extreme movers in the animal kingdom, that distance was roughly 324,000 times the runner's body length.
Why would you do that?
Why indeed? But you could consider that one of the most extreme cases of single trip movement in humans.
Yeah.
So looking at fruit flies, this is a study coming out of Caltech. They discovered that fruit flies can fly up to 15 kilometers, which is about 9 miles in a single journey, which does not sound very far, except that is 6 million times their body length. So that would be the equivalent of that marathon runner running 10,000 kilometers. And remember that first case that I mentioned was 560 kilometers. So that's a lot. So this is also much farther than most migratory bird species fly in a day. So this is a pretty extreme case of animal movement. And if you think about fruit flies and how you usually see them, they're usually just kind of flying around in one place, kind of aimlessly buzzing and stopping and buzzing and stopping. So this seems very different than how you might think about a fruit fly. So this is all because of something called, a paradox that was discovered in the 1940s by Theodosius Dobzhansky and other pioneers in population genetics. Very good name, strong name for a geneticist, I would say, who studied Drosophila species in the Southwest United States. And the paradox was that fly populations were separated by thousands of kilometers, but they were very genetically similar. More genetically similar than could be explained by estimates of how far tiny flies could fly. So this is the paradox. How are they maintaining this gene pool if they're separated by such space that a fly could never fly?
They're flying.
They're flying.
They're
That's the answer.
doing it.
They're doing it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So in the 1970s and 80s, there were some population geneticists that wanted to address this paradox. So what they did is they coated hundreds of thousands of fruit flies in fluorescent powder and released them in Death Valley.
Fly, be free.
And the group detected a few fluorescent flies in buckets of rotting bananas over 15 kilometers away the next day. So that's pretty far.
You know, wind can carry an insect pretty far.
Interesting you bring that up. So that was exactly the question. How long did it take them to fly there? Were they just blown there by wind? Was it an accident? So that's what this Caltech paper was specifically looking at. So they went to the Mojave Desert and they released a bunch of flies. So how does this scientifically work? How do you find a fly in the middle of the desert? So they went to Coyote Lake, which is a dry lake bed 140 miles from Caltech in the Mojave Desert. They had hundreds of thousands of common lab fruit flies, Drosophila melanogaster. And they had traps in set locations, and they wanted to measure how long it took insects to fly there. So they set up 10 odor traps in a circular ring. Each was along a 1 kilometer radius from the release site. So they were just measuring how long it took the flies to go 1 kilometer. Each trap contained fermenting apple juice, champagne yeast, and their products, which are carbon dioxide and ethanol, irresistible to fruit flies.
It's a lot of flies.
Yeah. The traps also had a camera, and they had a one-way valve so that the flies could go in but not out. And then they set up weather stations to measure wind speed, to your point, Kiki. And they were able to look at the direction at the release site throughout each experiment so that they could see how they were affected by the wind. They did not put any fluorescent powder on these guys because they didn't want to weigh them down or anything like that. But how they did know that these weren't wild flies is that they are extremely rare in the Mojave. So if you're going to find a fruit fly, it's probably going to be one of these released ones. So before the release, they placed the traps, they checked them over time, and confirmed we are not catching fruit flies. They are not around here. Then they put these hundreds of thousands of flies in a bucket with a bunch of sugar so that they were energized, but there was no protein, which means they had a drive for protein-rich food, which were in those lures. So that would force them to disperse in search. Quote, "The person who stayed at the center of the ring to open the lids off of all the buckets witnessed quite a spectacle. It was beautiful. There were so many flies, so many that you were overwhelmed by the whirring drone. A few of them would land on you, often crawling in your mouth, ears, and nose." So that was the spectacle at the
Wear
center.
a mask, people, even when you're outdoors.
Wear a mask.
For no other reason
Wear a mask.
than the hundreds of thousands of flies you might encounter.
Yes. So it took about 16 minutes for the first fruit flies to cover 1 kilometer to reach the traps, which corresponded to approximately a meter per second. So they considered that the lower limit because these first flies, they might have buzzed around in circles. They might not have gone on a straight line. So this is considered their lower limit of speed. Previous studies from the lab showed them that fully fed fruit flies had the energy to fly continuously for up to 3 hours. So when they add those two things together, you get 12 to 15 kilometers in a single flight, even in a gentle breeze. And they could go further if aided by the wind. Yes. And that distance, as previously mentioned, is 6 million times the average body length of a fruit fly. So now they were able to propose a model suggesting that each fly, it looks as though they are choosing a random direction, but they know from previous studies that they do use the sun to help kind of guide them as they go. So it would appear that these flies are just starting to fly and then they're using the sun as their guide to continue in that direction. And they're not just kind of bobbing around trying to find, is there something over here? Is there something over here? No, they're flying in one direction and waiting to catch a sniff. And as soon as they catch a sniff, then they beeline or fly line or whatever you want to say to the food source. So all this to say, this is impacting kind of how we think about fruit flies and how they move. It's impacting how we think about animals that are kind of those marathon runners, flyers, whatever you want to call them. And I think also the thing that I find very interesting about this is this speaks to mechanics of small insects. Yeah. And when we think about invasive animals or pests, this could be helpful information to know kind of what a flying insect could be capable of. Fruit flies could be the superstars of this, or they could be very average. We don't know.
Right. I think that's a really great point, because if something is introduced to an area, how long is it going to take for that insect to spread?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And maintain their gene pool, because they can spread back and forth.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that has very huge ecological ramifications.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. Thanks, Blair. Who knew? Those fruit flies in my kitchen, if I chase them out, they might run a really long way.
Yeah. I'm going to run 6 million body lengths. Oh.
Why did Justin leave right now before his stories?
There he is.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that does it for the Animal Corner. This is This Week in Science. If you're interested in some merchandise, we've got some wonderful Blair's Animal Corner artwork on some cool products at our Zazzle store. So if you head to twist.org and click on our Zazzle link, you might be able to find something that you enjoy. But right now, there's more science for you to enjoy. We were talking Animal Corner stuff. So Justin, you want to bring us some endangered animals?
Yes. I was going to let the coffee machine hopefully run through its course before I was needing to talk, but I will go ahead and speak. Do I have endangered animals? Well, I do have an endangered animal. Okay. So this is an infectious disease story. Infectious disease is apparently a threat to endangered chimpanzees, the very ones that we are most familiar with that were studied by Jane Goodall at the Gombe National Park in Tanzania. Research there led by scientists at Emory University shows that nearly half of the fecal samples from wild chimpanzees contain bacteria that is resistant to a major class of antibiotics. Now, it's not common for the chimpanzees to take antibiotics, being that they are wild. So what is going on? How do they happen to be resistant to antibiotics if they don't take them? Turns out they do take them. They take a lot of them. One thing, the antibiotic is commonly used by people in the vicinity of the park. This is published in the journal Pathogens. This is Thomas Gillespie, senior author of the study. Our results suggest that antibiotic-resistant bacteria is actually spreading from people to non-human primates by making its way into the local watershed. People are bathing and washing in the streams, contaminating the water with drug-resistant bacteria, where then wild chimpanzees and baboons will drink. So this has got a couple of things. First of all, they also tested people in the neighboring village and found a lot of the people there also have this bacteria that is resistant to the antibiotic that they currently use to treat gastrointestinal problems, diarrhea type issues that they may have. So this is not on. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, is this like, why is this? Is this people tracking it into the park on their shoes? Is this people using nature as a dumping ground, a bathroom? Like, what's going on there?
Well, according to what they said, it was the water supply.
Okay.
It's swimming and bathing. This is probably not an area that has a lot of infrastructure around the park. So
right, yeah.
So the sulfonamide resistance appeared in 74% of the human samples. So 74% of the human samples were resistant to the antibiotic. Had antibiotic-resistant bacteria in them. 48% of the chimpanzee samples and 34% of the baboon samples. So that's a pretty striking, regular domestic animals, it was about 17%. So a normal domestic, cat, dog, pet kind of a thing isn't getting the kind of exposure that the wild animals in the area are. So partly it's like, okay, well, that's not good for chimpanzees. Their health could be affected by it. I guess if we need to give them an antibiotic treatment because they're already an endangered thing, but that's the less likely. The more likely scenario, this is now we're creating a reservoir for antibiotic resistance in a creature that is not going to get the alternative version of it that knocks out the infection, that could quell or remove those bacteria from the population. And we're creating a sort of a pathogen bomb out there in nature, this reservoir of resistance that we're passing on to other creatures. And if you can pass it to a creature,
they can pass it back.
They can chance to pass it back at some other point or to some other people. So anyway, that's not great news.
No.
No.
What are we going to do? Do we keep people out of nature? Like you've that's been your call for years, Justin, or do we have to figure something else out for antibiotics?
I think we need to get rid of nature. Better.
It's time to admit that we are just done with nature. We're just through with it. We don't need the animals.
We don't need
anymore.
It. Just get out. Right.
My understanding is that a lot of this isn't just from ecotourism. It's from people who actually live in those areas and water treatment not being up to snuff. So I think that's the real call to action here, is to help make sure that all people on this planet have access to clean water.
Yeah, maybe not. So the other part of it is also that the antibiotics that they're using, that the bacteria are becoming resistant to, are over the counter. So people are taking them for whatever reason.
They feel better, and then they're stopping.
And then they're stopping. Correct. Mm-hmm. So some of it, yes, is going to be controlling waterways, but another portion of that is responsible, informed antibiotic use that's done in a responsible way to prevent resistance from building up in the population to begin with.
And I assume if this kind of thing is happening in this one park, that there are examples of this to be found around the world, that multiple different species, that where humans go, where we leave our refuse, where we soil the water that other animals use, we are spreading these genes for antibiotic resistance and creating lots of reservoirs. It's not just going to be these chimpanzees. I mean, these animals, we have to, the primates, we maybe have to worry about for returning the favor at some point because they're so related to us. But I think it's something that we need to be thinking about everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we could be creating all sorts of reservoirs that we're not even aware of. You're absolutely right. I think it is likely that it is going to be easier to do or more prevalent in the chimpanzee populations because of the shared. Maybe there's a large microbiota sharing that's taking place there compared to other animals. I don't know that, but it wouldn't seem to. Especially if you live in the same region, eat the same food, swim in the same streams, your microbiota might be a little closer than in other places. I don't know.
Did you have another story?
Yes. This is Konstantina Theophanopoulos, graduate student. Their work focused on how the hormone oxytocin influences human speech development. She was preparing to use those findings to do a further study to investigate how songbirds do speech development. How they learn
development. Yeah,
how they learn to sing. Right. She was doing this at Rockefeller University. She was taking this hormone oxytocin that's known to do this human speech influence development. See how that hormone operates in birds. Only problem is, birds don't have oxytocin. There goes the whole concept for what I wanted to study. Quoting Konstantina Theophanopoulos, I'm saying that wrong. Konstantina Theophanopoulos. Everywhere that I looked in the genome, I was unable to find a gene called oxytocin in birds. Konstantina Theophanopoulos eventually came across mesotocin, which is an analog for oxytocin in birds, reptiles, and amphibians. So maybe it would work the same. Maybe it was similar enough. Maybe it's the same general pathways to take place. Interestingly, she started looking in to see what else didn't have oxytocin. Fish. Fish do not have oxytocin. They have isotocin. Unless it's a spiny dogfish, in which case it would be vasotocin, another different hormone. So everybody's got these different hormones. Similar issues then started to arise when studying other hormones within the birds. Vasotocin, which doesn't exist in humans. We have vasopressin, but that's completely different than vasotocin, which is in birds. And then the oxytocin receptors that she had studied looking for the analog in birds. There was this OXTR in mammal studies. It might be VT3 or MTR or MESO-R in other species. It was just the nomenclature of everything was so different that you would think these systems were completely, totally devoid of interconnection.
Right.
So I started getting lost, said Professor Eric Jarvis, whose lab Konstantina Theophanopoulos was working in. I said, before we dig deeper, we need to make sure we've made the right assumptions about which human and bird genes are evolutionarily related. So that digging deeper led to a paper, which has been published in the journal Nature. In the journal Nature. Theophanopoulos and Jarvis demonstrate that the human hormone, known as oxytocin, is in fact one and the same gene across all major vertebrate species and lineages. The similarities are in fact so striking that scientists advocate for that the scientists Jarvis and Theophanopoulos are now advocating for cleaning up the jargon once and for all, applying a new standard nomenclature for their hormones known as oxytocin and for vasopressin, because that's also the same.
Yeah.
This reminds me of how when I took animal physiology in school, all of the structures in an animal's body have names, but then when you take human anatomy, the exact same structures have different names, even though they're the exact same structures in a mouse or a cat or a human. They have different names because they're inside a human.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting because Eric Jarvis has been involved in the defining and naming the anatomy, the neuroanatomy of birds for many years. He runs a bird lab. This is what he does, and he studies the evolutionary relationships between different animals. And so it's been interesting to watch over the years the conversation about the cortex in humans, the hippocampus, the limbic system, and all these structures in the human brain, and then come to find, okay, we've got these analogous structures in the bird brain. How analogous are they? Well, they have like very similar structures, and what was being called the pallium of birds is pretty much like a cortex, except it's not called the cortex because it's structured a little bit differently, but basically it's the same thing. So he's seen this before, so it's an interesting...
There was one brain region that always got lost in birds.
That is the hippocampus. No, I'm sorry. No, it was the olfactory lobe. The olfactory lobe got lost in birds.
Birds can't smell, but it was because it would fall off of the brain, right?
Yeah.
So, but this is also, and we're talking about anatomy level. When you get to the genomic level, it is insane. If you go look up any gene, you start to find that the gene also has 13 other names that it has been given over time. It has been discovered over and over again.
Over again.
And this is partly due to the fact that scientists who we were doing gene sequencing piecemeal to begin with because it was very difficult and expensive. And so you have different species of bacteria and different larger complex life forms that have been sequenced separately from the group, and everything's being called a different thing. And then you started over time realizing, oh, this is the same code in your creature as it is in my organism, as it is in that plant or whatever, right? And so then they started combining them, saying, okay, these genes do this, but they have still a dozen more names per gene because of that reason. One of the fascinating ones is the gene that sporulates yeast is also involved in the budding off of yeast. The reproduction of yeast is also involved in the production of neurons. We have these great crossovers, but because we have so much different nomenclature across, we need to clean up the language. And the sooner the better. The sooner the better. There's no time like the present to fix your words, people.
Well, it's not just cleaning up the language and fixing the words. It's having somebody take a comprehensive look comparatively across species boundaries. Because like you said, researchers get into what they are studying, and they're not usually, if you're studying a bird, you're just studying that bird. You're not studying humans or mice or chimpanzees or yeast. You're studying that bird. And so you're not paying attention to the other disciplines of science that may have been involved. But sometimes the disciplines cross and they become interdisciplinary. And so this is an example of that. And this is the scientific process. This is fixing it. It's like going, hey, I saw this thing, and now let's organize it better. This is the self-organizing process of science, which I think is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And it can be difficult too, because you can have a gene that looks like a gene, especially when you start to get into microorganisms and you have things that are maybe separated lineage-wise by 50 million years. And you might have similar genes that do completely different things. That's fine when it comes down to the genomic level. Name them the same thing. If you study that organism, you know it does this in your organism. Fine. You're talking about the anatomy of vertebrates that do not have that long of a history of separation for a lot of it, that do have so much crossover on the anatomy level, at the very least, in these hormones that are chemically, molecularly the same thing. They have genes that are producing them, they're looking the same. Just call them the same thing. If they function differently, you can notate that. But you don't need it. And then you can actually have, like you're saying, better collaboration, because you can have somebody read somebody else's paper on a completely different organism and go, oh, wow, that's interesting. I understand that has a correlation to what I've been studying, as opposed to sounds like something very different.
Exactly. They did all have the same idea, though. Meso and vaso and tocins, and they were all in there. But anyhow, I got some studies for you. You want to hear some things about brains?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, speaking of, these people trying to figure out the oxytocin system and nomenclature, and they've been putting together using genomics as a tool. Well, researchers at UC Davis have been using mouse brains as a tool for determining hallucinogenic drugs that don't have hallucinogenic effects. Wait, what? Yes. So one of the issues, we've talked about it many times on the show with hallucinogenic drugs, ketamine, mushrooms, LSD, they show promise in treating mental health issues. However, the hallucinogenic aspect is one part that many people might not be comfortable with and would probably not want to take the drug as a treatment because of. And how many people have heard terrible things through their lives because of the war on drugs and all of the issues that people lose their minds to hallucinogens and all the bad things, bad drugs, right? So now you're supposed to take them to help you. But what if we could find compounds that are related to the hallucinogens, yet not hallucinogenic? Drugs that still bind with the serotonin receptor in the brain and have the serotonergic effect of, say, LSD or mushrooms, but don't cause any hallucinations. Suddenly, you have something that may help people. Infinord Prefect in the chat room is saying, that's the point of it. That's the part that helps. We don't know that for sure. And I mean, that is a question. Is it the is part of it the hallucination that lends itself to a psychological aspect of the brain stimulating itself in a particular way that leads to a certain treatment? Is that part of it, or does the hallucination have to be there at all? And this is a question, but we couldn't answer it previously because we couldn't figure out one without the other. And
I thought that was the point of the microdosing studies, because those didn't cause hallucinations.
Right, but as the one study that we talked about on the show a couple of weeks ago found, microdosing doesn't do anything.
Right.
It's such a small dose, it's not doing anything. So it seems like the result is placebo effect at best. But in this new situation, these researchers at UC Davis have used optogenetics to genetically modify mice that were already genetically modified to have a nervous anxiety disorder and to show depressive symptoms. One of the things that they do, they get depressed, and normal mice, when they are given sugar water, will drink sugar water. Depressed mice, when given a choice between regular water and sugar water, just go to the regular water. They don't even get excited by the sugar water anymore. I know. It's like, I'm so sad. I'm not even going to drink the sugar water. Man. So they have this model of depression in mice that they were able to access. And in their work, what they did is they genetically modified the mice so that the serotonin receptor in the brain was activated to show a light when that serotonin receptor was bound to by a compound that they gave the mice. So they gave the mice a number of compounds. There were like 34 compounds that they tested. 3 of them actually stimulated the serotonin receptor, caused the brain to light up, and they had a signal. 2 of them were related to 5-MeO-DMT, which is known to cause hallucinatory experiences. One of them, AAZA154, which is a compound that there's nobody who's ever written about it ever before. It was like, there's nothing. This is a brand new thing, but they tried it because it was a compound that was related to these others. And it stimulated the receptors, but they have this measure of what the animals do. And they found that on the 5-MeO-DMT, the animals have this head shaking that they do, which is, they say, a very good indicator of a hallucinatory experience. And so on the DMT-like substances, the mice, their brains lit up and they shook their heads around a lot. So they were having a thing. Those with the AAZ, however, their brains lit up, but they acted just like normal. And they were also able to show that with these different compounds, the mice started drinking sugar water again.
Started doing things they enjoyed again.
Yes, it alleviated their depressive symptoms. They started doing enjoyable things. And they didn't shake their heads around like they were trying to clear them of whatever was going on in there. So this, what they're saying this system can point to is a way to differentiate between drugs that cause certain side effects and have effects that you are looking for as a treatment. And this could potentially be used as a platform for animal testing of a large number of these G protein coupled type stimulatory compounds where they hit these, where they access and they stimulate these particular receptors on cell surfaces and cause a sensory cascade, a signaling cascade through the cell. There's a large number of them that are used for different current mental health treatments, lots of different reasons. And if we could go through them, perhaps we could create better treatments with fewer side effects. It's pretty awesome.
Am I the only one wondering right now what mice hallucinate?
Nope.
I'm very curious.
I've been thinking about this all day. What is it? Do androids dream of electric sheep?
Yeah.
So this requires, I think, a longer term study.
Yes.
My sense is that this is treating a symptom and not doing necessarily a radical long-term change like we have seen take place with previous experiments with humans and psilocybin.
Why would you guess that?
I guess that because there's something about psychedelics that are intense enough that I believe have more than a chemical change take place, but a psychological reference point. If you have delved into a psychedelic experience, there's part of it that is perhaps somewhat psychotic in nature. There's some of it that is an extreme experience of senses and thought patterns and the rest, by which when you return to normalcy, you have something to contrast an anxiety against, or you have a sort of like, okay, this is weird. I've dealt with weirder. This is now something that I can handle totally fine and totally calm.
But what if you could create similar rewiring artificially?
Yeah, that's the part that I'm having a hard time, because whether or not it's a chemical rewiring that's taken place based on a chemical exchange without your brain's participation, or whether
your brain's not consciously participating.
Your
brain is still participating chemically.
Yeah, no, it is either way. But it's sort of like the difference between having a therapist and taking a drug in lieu of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I am putting a psychedelical trip into the category of spending time talking to a trained psychological professional. I'm putting those in that same category and putting the drug thing over on the other side. So, but yes, I think the best comment in the chat room It's like Christian rock. You're not making Jesus cool. You're ruining rock and roll. Oh, thank you, Fada.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was mentioning earlier is, we don't know whether the experience requires the conscious psychological input aspect. And that is something that needs to be tested. And we need to be able to find the compounds to be able to go, okay, let's try this and see if it works. Maybe it won't work as well as the full psychedelic experience. Maybe you need that. We don't know that yet, but we do know that these psychedelics at this point are very promising for helping a lot of mental health issues. And so what if we could make them available to more people? I mean, one of the things that did bother me about the wording of some of the research article was that they didn't talk about this aspect just as a way to help a larger population of people gain access to the medication. They were using it potentially as a way to combat drug abuse. That if you get rid of the reasons that people abuse drugs, and I'm like, I don't know people who abuse psychedelics, but I mean, they're probably out there, but I gotta guess that psychedelic abuse is that's a reaching term.
That's a red herring. I feel like
Let's get rid of painkillers.
Let's
get rid of all pain medicine then. If that's the standard that we're going to use.
So silly.
Yep. Yes. Anyway, my last story for the night has to do with brain cells, more brain cells, and looking at Alzheimer's brains. The Salk Institute, Rusty Gage of the Salk Institute and his team published in the journal Cell Stem Cell this week their work taking the skin cells, fibroblasts, of Alzheimer's patients and reprogramming them to turn them into brain cells, neuronal cells, and then comparing those Alzheimer patient induced neuronal cells with induced neuronal cells of non-Alzheimer's patients to find out what kind of differences there are between them. This is an amazing use of stem cell technology, this taking cells back in time kind of approach, or being able to redifferentiate cells and give them a new lease on existence. Because normally we can look at MRIs, fMRIs. We're getting better at looking at brains from the outside in, but you can't take somebody's brain out of their head. You can't take pieces of their brain out of their head to sample it. Just, you have Alzheimer's disease. Let me take a scoop of brain so that I can look at this and do a research study. It's really frowned upon.
It's frowned upon, yes. But you can do it. Just saying it's possible.
Right. So usually researchers are dealing with the brains of deceased, and they're dealing with deceased brain tissue. And so they were able to show, and have showed in previous work, that if you take the fibroblasts of an adult and turn them into the neurons of an adult, that even though they've changed from skin cells to brain cells, they're still adult cells. So you haven't taken them back to babyhood. They're not baby cells. They are adult cells. So you are just looking at the transcription factors, the proteins, all the aspects of these cells that would be getting expressed in their brain. Except it's in a dish in the lab. And by doing this, they were able to see the difference in the profiles between these healthy and Alzheimer diseased brain cells. And what they discovered is there's like a whole suite of differences. First big difference is that the brain cells of the Alzheimer's patients don't have as many synapses. They don't connect as much. They don't grow as many connections to connect to other cells as the healthy cells do. They also what is under the? They also have changed their profile, all of their proteins, and they have a bunch of genes that are active to also take them into an undifferentiated state, kind of like a cancer cell, so that they are less brain celly and more and less defined as a cell type than healthy cells. And this is something that happens in cancer cells as well, that the kind of definition of the cell as the cell sees itself is changed. They also find that the cells have much higher DNA damage, a lot of cell stress going on. There's what they call epigenetic erosion. So all the windings and the tight packing of the DNA is loosened up, and things are getting in there and getting broken, and some things are getting transcribed that shouldn't be transcribed. There is oncogenic signaling happening. There's a whole bunch of differences that they wouldn't have seen otherwise as a result of kind of taking these cells into a
So what I'm
different state.
hearing is if I know or someone I love is it looks like they're getting Alzheimer's and they're in early stages, then you want to take skin samples early on to then culture into healthy brain cells to do a brain transplant, right? I mean, that's
Right,
really
yes,
what this is about.
yes, the brain transplant, because the
Or
brain
a
transplant
graft,
would
you know,
not
maybe
change
just
personality
doing some
at all.
grafts. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one of the
It is
I mean,
interesting to know, though, that
Yeah.
if you're doing stem cell stuff based on skin cells, you want healthy skin cells, and you want skin cells from kind of an ideal time, I guess,
yeah,
from the body.
right. Yeah, you want skin cells that are of an idealized age, not aging.
So you're
Yeah.
you're gonna have some skin cells on ice. This is future
Mhm.
medicine, right? They're gonna harvest from you like when you're at the peak health, like
Yeah, and so-
25. They're gonna take some and freeze it.
So one of the last aspects of this study that's really interesting is they took induced pluripotent stem cells, and so it's not just taking a fibroblast and a skin cell, turning it into a brain cell. This is like taking that neuron and going, okay, neuron, we're going to take you back. This is the rejuvenation, the time machine, the neural time machine that takes the cell back to its baby state. And what they found is that by reprogramming, by rejuvenating the cells, it reversed the Alzheimer's disease effects. And so what they're saying from this study is that Alzheimer's disease is definitely a disease of aging. So, but it's not that everybody's going to get it, but it happens as a result of aging. And so perhaps there are things in the aging timeline that could be treated, or where things could be slowed down.
Interesting.
I'm getting to the point where, as many of us are, perhaps, where they need to hurry up and create the drug that you take that ceases your aging. I'm going to need it sooner than later.
Now.
We're running out. Like, I thought this by the time I got to this age, we'd already be done with aging.
Nope, still
And
working
now
on
I'm
it.
getting, like, and it's getting to the point where I'm like, okay, you got to hurry up now. You got to hurry up, because I'm not going to be this young forever. And this young already has got more gray hair than I started with. So we need to hurry up. Get this anti-aging medicine. It's still, Blair, you got time. I know you're over there.
I have a
smiling.
little bit
time.
more than you. I have a little bit more, but it's still coming for me.
Kids today, understand. You need to really invest and get on this right away. You need to stay, because you need to do it in your life. You can't wait for somebody else to create the anti-aging wonder drug that keeps you from ever getting old and dying. That needs to happen. And this generation didn't do it. We're sorry. We were busy. I don't know
We're
what
learning.
we were doing.
So I feel like every year there's more information about what it is that leads to aging. We're finding out so many new things, and they're all, there are people out there who are very interested in living forever. And so they're taking all of this information and they're starting to put it all together, and they're going to package it into treatments and plans and, boxes that can get delivered to your house every month. Yeah,
the generation before us, they gave us vitamins. They said that would do it. Vitamins didn't do it.
Vitamins.
Oh, vitamins.
Remember that? Remember
Here's
vitamins?
something to make your pee really brightly colored. Enjoy.
Just passing through. You know what the
they're
vitamin
not
said?
meaningless.
You know
I
what the
don't mean to say
vitamin
that,
said
but
after
they're
it
not-
was swallowed?
What?
I'm just passing through.
That's
Anyway.
great. I love that.
They're not completely useless, but they're not the panacea of everlasting life or health.
I don't know. I think listening to This Week in Science is the panacea of everlasting mental health and curiosity.
Unfortunately, it isn't. So this is actually, I didn't bring this.
You're not helping.
I know, but I didn't bring this. Listen to the show. You'll live forever because we're a wonder cure. But there was a story I didn't bring that said that having advanced education does not buffer you from neural degeneration. It does. You just the fact that you keep your mind active on these things and higher isn't a buffer against time and age and neural degeneration.
See, that's interesting because I just read several articles related to the fact that retirement often is correlated with neural degeneration because you're using your brain less. So
yeah, it happens at a certain age typically. So there you go. It's correlated with a certain age range.
This study was people who retired versus people who didn't of the same ages, but it's fine.
Okay. But
don't worry about it. Anyway, Kiki's trying to end the show.
Oh, is that where we are heading? Oh.
Yeah, she was doing a closer thing. That's what that was.
Is that what it was? Is that why it was? Okay, so listen to the show and you'll stay smarter forever. And transition. Can you just say transition? Is that a good transition? No. You have to be more clever.
Transition. Be more clever. This Week in Science, making you more clever every day. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Have we done it? I think we've done it.
Mm-hmm.
Done it.
Another tight 3 hours.
Another tight show there. I hope everyone enjoyed all the time they got to spend with us. I have shout outs for wonderful people in our TWIS community. Fada, thank you so much for your help on show notes and on social media. Identity 4, thank you for recording the show. Gord, thanks for making those chat rooms flow. Rachel, thank you for your assistance. To my wonderful co-hosts, thank you very much for being here every week. And to our Patreon sponsors, I say thank you. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon. It's amazing so much helping is good. Thank you to... I can get back to my window. I put the window certain places so I can read it, and then it ends up in the back behind things. Thank you. Carl Kornfeld, Jen Myronek, Melanie Stegman, De Kramsta, Karen Tozy, Woody MS, Andrea Bassett, Chris Wozniak, Dave Bunge, Vegard, Chefstad, Hal Snyder, Donathan Stiles, a.k.a. Don Stylo, John Chioli, Guillaume, John Lee, Ali Coffin, Gaurav Sharma, Shubru, Darwin Hannon, Donald Munda, Stephen Alberon, Daryl Myshak, Stu Pollock, Andrew Swanson, Fredis 104, Sky Luke, Paul Ronovich, Kevin Reardon, Noodles Jack, Brian Carrington, Matt Bass, Joshua Fury, Shauna Nina Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenflow, Gene Tellier, Steve Leisman, a.k.a. Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Dana Pearson, Richard, Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley, Kevin Railsback, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, Mark Bassaros, Artyom, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Robert Coburn, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul, Matt Sutter, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Mountain Sloth, Jim Drapeau, Sarah Chavez, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, David Neighbor, Eric Knapp, E.O., Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Steve DeBell, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul Stanton, Paul Disney, Patrick Pecoraro, Tony Steele, Ulysses Adkins, Brian Condren, and Jason Roberts. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. And if you are interested in supporting us on Patreon. You can find information at TWIS.org. Click on the links. On next week's show,
we will be back Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific time or 5 a.m. Central European time. Broadcasting live from our YouTube and Facebook channels and from twis.org/live.
That's right. And if you want to listen to us as a podcast, just search for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, take out your phone, text us to your friends, get them to subscribe as well.
Yeah. For more information on anything you heard here today, show notes and links to the stories that we reported on can be found at our website, www.twis.org, where you can also sign up for a newsletter if you're so inclined to read. Thanks.
Reading. You can also contact us directly. Email Kirsten at kirsten@thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistminion@gmail.com, or me, Blair, at blairbaz@twis.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into an anti-star.
You can also hit us up on the Twitter where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to in the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world, so I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice, show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand, and all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way, so everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer, and it shouldn't be news, that what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. Jeopardy. And This Week in Science is coming your way, so everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 Got a laundry list of items I want to address, from stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. But how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say, and if you've learned anything from the words that we've said, then please just remember it's all in your head. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 science.
So I was trying to move my finger and my head in opposite directions and speed it up. And it gets really hard. You go one way to the other and then try and speed it up.
Oh, yeah. That's
And
funny.
then suddenly you're like synchronized.
Oh, no, I just got dizzy. That's all that happened.
Want to make you dizzy.
I'm
Coordinate,
so
team.
dizzy. My head is spinning.
So I'm trying to get the workers to, they need oxygen, so I'm working the bellows, you know. But they're deep, deep underground because I have invented something. A gravity turbine. Well, basically it works like this. You dig a really deep hole and you attach a rope to something heavy and then you drop it. And it comes through the spindle and it turns the generator. So I figured we can just drop heavy things down a hole and we have free energy for everybody. So I've been working on this. This is where I am going.
This is what you've been working. You've been
This is where I
digging.
been going. No, I don't dig. I have workers who dig. The minions are digging. But I work the bellows because they complain they don't have oxygen at the bottom of the hole. So that's what I do.
Oxygen at the bottom of the hole. There would be, though, oxygen at the bottom of the hole. The atmosphere would fill it. Then it might get too hot and get burned off by the heat. The deeper the hole gets.
The only person who's known to have jumped out a window while on LSD is Frank Olson. He's an American bacteriologist and a biological warfare scientist who at the time jumped out of the 10th story building of 10th floor of a Manhattan hotel he was staying at. But there is some question about whether or not he was intentionally doing the drug or was thrown out of the window. But it became Frank. Go look up Frank Olson. Go find out what that story's about.
That's interesting because I know someone who told me a story from the 70s. They were at a party and someone did that. It was like a second story window. I think they ended up being okay, but
yeah. So there was also from the 70s a public service little filmy thing where they showed a person jumping out a second story window. That's the one that everybody from the area was like, oh yeah, it happened that one time. And they all describe like this party is on the second floor and this same thing. It's like, you watched the thing. You might have been high at the time, but it's not a real thing that happened.
You watched the public service message.
Yeah.
The evils of...
Oh, I got in trouble. I got in trouble in the 9th grade, I think, when they had the Nancy Reagan's just say no to drugs program.
You did LSD in the 9th grade, Justin?
Yes, actually I did. But this was But they had it might have been 10th grade. No, I think it was 9th. Anyway, but they had this spokesperson come from the Just Say No thing, and they were up at the front of the classroom. And they were like, there are 356 different chemicals in marijuana. Hand goes up in the back of the room, inquiring mind. Yes, you bend the back. How many chemicals are in breakfast cereal? How many of the chemicals that you describe are in other plants that we eat? How many of the chemicals that you're talking about have actually been...
You're a rabble-rouser. Yes. Stop rabble-rousering.
I got kicked out of class.
Get out.
I got kicked out of class for asking
You are not following the message.
I got kicked out of the classroom for asking the follow-up scientific inquiry questions. But this has always been the thing. You can't convince some people of anything. Obviously. And there's no greater proof than a pandemic where everybody's life is that moment, like, hey, gosh, the whole world could come together if we were just attacked by aliens. Like the Independence Day movie, like, today will be Independence Day across the world. We're all together because we have a common enemy. No, that's not how it would happen. Half the population would say the aliens aren't real. The other half would side with them. Like, it's just, and then there'd be another half of the people who would be living underground, hiding from both of those people. Yeah, there is no we all come together with the same ideas on anything ever.
One of my favorite memes about the pandemic was about, I'm not going to believe any zombie movies anymore unless there's someone running around saying that they don't believe the zombies are real.
You've got to be kidding. I don't believe in zombies. Fake news.
Zombies only kill like 1 in a million people. So
I'll tell you what, zombies don't wear masks. That's how you tell. Zombies are the ones without the masks, whose brains have already been eaten. Yeah, Dare's worst enemy. Yeah, they did not appreciate my counterpointing their just say no message fear-mongering. Question,
well, it's frustrating because
for marijuana use, or is that just an alcohol thing? Question.
The frustrating thing about all that too is like it's very reminiscent to me of abstinence-only sex ed.
It backfires completely. Tennessee
is
tried
it like basically like, let's not talk about it, just never do it. Oh no, they did it and they didn't do it safely.
State of Tennessee, the entire state of Tennessee is the model of that, where they stopped doing sex education and did abstinence education training of some sort, and it resulted in the highest rate of teen pregnancies in the nation. There you go. That's it.
Yeah. Well, that's also, like the thing about the drinking age being so high is like, then 18-year-olds, when you send them off to college, they have to hide their drinking and they're not doing it safely and all these things, right? It's like if you don't stigmatize it, they're allowed to drink from the time they're a senior in high school. They get to, they still live at home. They have their parents' protection when they get into trouble. They learn a little bit more about it before they're off on their own. They don't have to hide. They can drink out in the open. There's all sorts of stuff about it that I feel like it's a lot of the same. And then, the same thing with drugs is like the whole idea behind all of it being illegal means that there's no regulation on any of it. Right. So like, So it really, it makes it so much more dangerous because you could be thinking you have one thing and it's laced with another thing or anything else going on because you're not, because it's not regulated or watched because it's all illegal.
No, that's a great point. There can be so many foul components that made the drug cheaper or cut it into more portions or whatever has been done to it that could be extremely harmful to the human body, much more so than the drug you were thinking you were taking or attempting to take, because you did your homework on that, and that's fine. So then you bought your illegal drug. Turns out didn't have quite the same ingredients as you were expecting.
It was padded with something else.
Yeah, and so there's that whole. There's also again, to go back to like a high school mentality. There was one kid in our group of friends whose parent was permissive of drug use amongst the teenagers. That's the house that some nights we went and crashed at. Had we not had that house to crash at, we still would have been out. Everybody was, one of those, oh yeah, I'm staying over at Johnny's house. Oh, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to Billy's house. We're still having to sleep. Everybody had to sleep over in the same night at somebody else's house, but we were all out. You know what I mean? Don't do that, kids, by the way. Don't ever do that. But
well, see, now you can have Find My iPhone turned on and you know exactly where everybody is.
But that was the sort of interesting thing is like there was this one parent you could sort of say it was like the irresponsible parent or the cool parent or the whatever, but it was the place that when we're like, hey, it's too cold or this night's rough, let's go find shelter and be safe. We had a safe place to go to. So there's that too. Anyway, the whole way that America handles, the whole way America handles everything at this point is pretty not as helpful as it could be towards the
It's not
system.
helpful because it's pro-corporate and it's
Anti-people.
A lot of it is also based in the like, this is how it's always been done
It's just
mentality, right? Which is so funny. I know we have that conversation in my house all the time about like, just because that's how it's always been done doesn't mean that's the right way to do it. And also this country is way too young to be stuck in our ways compared to other countries on this planet. Like we have not been around that long. So for us to be so stuck in this is how it's been done and this is what this says and well, we can't change this right now. We're so young.
And I want to know
Silly.
how our solution to every problem became put people in jail.
Yeah, well, there you go.
And if it didn't fix the problem,
money.
if it
It's
didn't
money.
fix the problem, put them
Pro-corporate
in jail for
money.
longer.
Yeah.
And if that
Money.
didn't fix the problem, put them in
Modern
jail
day
forever.
slavery is great. In America,
Also monetization
we
of
don't
humans.
have slaves
Yeah.
anymore. We just have everybody in jail who are doing all the work for free or for really reduced wages, which is basically slavery. So it's like modern day slavery that our government is allowing to have happen when our government's us. So we're allowing it to happen. That's really awesome. Go United States. Woohoo. That's my new song.
Pretty good. I like it because I get to be both pro-America, like while I'm singing it, and also face some of the grim realities. What needs to be fixed at the same time. I like it.
Yarr. Yeah, we're too young a country to have all this stuff happen, but it is what's happening, and I have hopes.
Idea was all of this. People had some bad ideas.
People with money who wanted more money.
Is it money? Is it all money? Is that what it is? It's power, which is separate from money. It can they go hand in hand, but they're not the same. They're not the same thing.
They are here. Yeah, they are.
Well, I got to start my day. I got to get going. It's been really
with these
fun.
very positive thoughts.
Oh boy.
Go study Denmark's system of jails and
it does not take
government and how they do things there in Denmark.
Yeah, I'll bring it back, but I'm telling you, it's going to require a lot of not putting people in jail, a lot of housing as a thing that everybody should have as a right, as well as education. And did you know?
And healthcare.
That the further you are away from access to higher education, the higher your chance of drug abuse is. Fun fact. Fun fact. All right. Good night, everybody.
Fun. I like that fun fact. Have a great
Say
week.
good night, Blair.
Are we're all done?
Are we? Is it just me?
You gotta go.
I was transitioning, but if you're not ready, I can talk. I got my coffee. The sun's out. We can do this all day. I'm just starting my day. I actually don't have anywhere to go right now. I'm fine.
That's like that's hot soup to get into.
As long as you two are up, let's just chat. Chat room, is there any question that you have? Hitler was in control of Denmark for a period. Yes, he was. And the King of Denmark, when they was it Christian? Was that his name? Anyway, they tried to make the Jews wear the yellow stars to identify them, and the king put one on and told everyone to put it on. If some of us are going to wear it, everyone's going to wear it.
Yep.
So yeah, there was an occupation that lasted a little time. There are still swastikas prominently displayed at the Carlsberg brewery. Fun fact, it predates the Nazis.
Yeah, they used that symbol, and it's actually a symbol that's in use. It's been in use in lots of iconography.
Sure, but the thing that occurs to me though is it's they were Carlsberg Brewery was the first like major industrial brewery the world had ever seen. They were exporting to all these countries. So there's always part of me in the back of the head that like if you first time you saw the Nazi flag they were starting out as a party, it might have been like, oh look, it's a giant beer sign. It was almost like they recruited off of free beer. Is the first way that ways that they did it. The symbols are still up. Carlsberg, of course, has changed their branding.
Good. That's a good plan.
But there's some old buildings and such that still have the statues or the carvings because they predate World War II.
Oh, Wiz Mike has a fly in the house. Go find out how far it can fly, Wiz Mike.
Hey, and there are now flies in the Mojave Desert. Has anybody noticed? They're like everywhere now. It used to be you could go to the Mojave Desert and there were no flies.
There were no bugs.
It's like they're everywhere.
Yeah. I think it depends on the year, though, the bugs in the desert, because it really depends on the moisture the rain that's happened in a particular year. Because the desert's super dry, but it's alive. And, the rains come, and then you have the eggs that can hatch and, like, all the bugs, blah, 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 and then it dries up, and they go, and they can fly in 16 kilometers from various places.
6 million body lengths.
6 million body lengths, exactly.
It's impressive. Noodles wants a bus update. Bus update is I got some of the solar panels on the roof, and I built this roof to handle this exact size of solar panel. And then apparently the manufacturer, I think, has discontinued this specific size of solar panel, which means I got a third of the solar panels. I got 400 up there. I'm going for 1,200 watts of solar power altogether. I have 400 up, but now I have to sort of redesign things a little bit because I need to fit a different solar panel up there. And I picked out my batteries. I picked out the solar. I've built my solar system. I picked out the solar system that I'm going to put together this summer so that the bus will be off-grid electricity. Yeah.
That's cool.
But right now I'm 6,000 miles away from the bus, so
you're not doing anything.
I want to go work on the bus, but it's too far to commute right now.
6,000 miles is too far away.
How long till it's done? You're never quite done building the bus. Well, this whole pandemic slowed everything down because I was supposed to get the thing signed off through my local Department of Motor Vehicles. Just having things checked off, but then they shut down for like a year. So I wasn't able to do that. So I've just been doing the work. Get 1,200 of the new and used for it. Yeah, I'm going to get the new ones. I just got to get them to fit right. Ford Prefect. I just need to get them to fit right. I have to, because I've built this massive steel roof rack to mount all the solar panels on. And now I have to plug some holes and move some poles and get the ones that are on the market that I can get now to fit. But it's fine. It's just more drilling and working.
Blair, you good?
I'm just getting sleepy.
You're getting sleepy.
Oh,
Okay.
I thought you guys wanted to hang out. What's happened? Now all of a sudden, I was ready to go. And you guys were like, no, Justin, why are you leaving? Oh, my party ruined the party. And now you're just like,
Ah.
Just didn't really mean it, did you? You just didn't really mean it.
Didn't really mean it.
You kind
I
of.
was
You were
I was
like,
just taken by surprise, that's all, but I'm ready.
I was hitting it with the transition, and you guys were like, "Whoa, why so soon?" I was like, "Okay, let's keep going."
I was
And,
surprised. We were having a conversation and then suddenly it was like zip, it's over, and now we're talking about buses and Blair's falling asleep. So
All right, fine. Say goodnight, Blair.
Good night, Blair. Say good night, Justin.
Can't.
Say good morning, Justin.
Good morning, Justin. Good night, Kiki.
good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of TWIS, another evening, another Justin caffeinated experience, another Blair and Sadie experience. I don't know what this experience is here. It's like my hair experience. Woohoo! We got some hair going on here today. Thank you all. Have a wonderful week. We hope you stay well, and we look forward to seeing you and talking with you again next week. Good night.
Good night.